Yay Networks.
Just as a person who's an addict, you have to realize that, on some level, it could all, you can't get too full of yourself because it could all come crashing down. But probably the most stressful thing that's ever happened to me professionally happened to me after I quit smoking. And I didn't start smoking again. So when people say to me, like, I quit smoking, but then like my mother-in-law, died and the stress made me smoke again. It's like, no. A, she was your stepmother-in-law. B, you're just using that.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. So here's how this episode came about. We were standing in line after David Sedaris' show at the Orpheum Theater here in New Orleans. I'd brought 2 of my books from the tower of David Sedaris books by my nightstand, along with a little pottery bowl that I'd made. It's small, like the size for soy sauce, and I had it wrapped in tissue paper to give him. I was so nervous. I love his books. I love his writing style, and I feel like I know him through his writing, and I had to remind myself that we're not actually friends. He has no idea who I am. I was also nervous because I wanted to ask him for an interview, for this interview. I had reached out to his publicist a few months before and had received a gracious note that his schedule was just too tight, understandably, as he was on tour, including this tour, this reading that we just attended. And when he's on tour, he's in a different city every single day for months. So when we got to the front of the line, I was, taking deep breaths, walked up to the table where he was signing, and I'm smiling, and I'm really consciously trying to pace out the thousands of thoughts that were ready to pour out like all at once. So I introduced myself, I handed him the bowl, and as he was unwrapping it, I let him know that I had made some little personalized bowls for him and for Hugh, his partner, but they were still in the kiln and still at the studio, the pottery studio. And so I offered to send them to him through his publicist. And then I was like, who, by the way, I've also been in touch with. And as he was signing the first book, I shared with him my idea for an interview for this podcast that you're listening to, and then also for an article for the Times-Picayune New Orleans Advocate. So he's quiet, he paused, he takes a few bites of his dinner, which is right there. So then I paused, like more deep breaths, and then I just said it. I was like, my heart is racing right now. And he just smiled, and then he asked what his publicist had said. And I said, well, she said, you're busy, obviously you're on tour here. And he said, well, I have a book coming out at the end of May, and that might be a really good time. Why don't you reach out to her again? And as we talked, he signed the second book. The second book that he signed is one of his collection of essays called The Best of Me. And he opened it up to the title page, and he added the letters NTAL to the word me. So it ended up saying the best of mental health, and then he signed it. It really couldn't have gone any better for what it was. And so now, here it is, the audio version of our interview. I'll also link to the article in the Times-Picayune New Orleans Advocate as well. So if you're a fan, or even if you're not yet deeply familiar with David Sedaris, you are in for a treat. A New York Times bestselling author, David Sedaris takes the otherwise ordinary, the everyday experiences and encounters, and turns them into brilliantly funny stories that make us laugh, make us think, and often see things through a different lens. He may not be who you would expect to be a wellness inspiration. It's certainly not something that he's known for. He is a regular contributor to The New Yorker, to BBC Radio, to CBS Sunday Morning. His 13th and latest book, Happy Go Lucky, has just been released. His journey here, though, has been anything but straightforward or expected. He worked odd jobs well into his 30s, from picking apples to refinishing floors to cleaning apartments. He's faced and overcome addiction to meth, to alcohol, to cigarettes. I love how he gets past the ordinary, seeing what's funny or bizarre or impactful in what seems like everyday nothingness. And this is how I live my life, looking for those interesting elements behind the everyday. I'm fascinated with the stories behind what we see, including his personal story behind his storytelling, behind his essays. He said that he's never been one to write about his feelings, in part because he didn't think they're that interesting. With the exception of quitting smoking, addiction is also not something that he's written about in great detail. Yet there's so much in his story that I have a feeling can be so inspiring to others who have struggled and perhaps are still struggling with similar challenges.
Hello?
Hi, David. It's Molly Kimball.
Hi.
How are you?
All right.
I am so honored for you to join. I have to say, when I first met you in New Orleans at the book signing after your show, I think I stopped mid-sentence and said, my heart is racing because I was trying to communicate to you so much what was coming out. And right now my heart is racing. So I'm trying to deep breath my way through these first few minutes.
Oh, I thought it was the cocaine. I thought that was it.
Speaking of, you have a wildly busy schedule with touring. And as we're recording this podcast, your new book, Happy Go Lucky, goes on sale tomorrow. So thank you for the time and congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Is it, by my count, is that your 12th book of essays or diary?
13.
I love your writing style. And of course, you're getting past the ordinary and seeing what's funny, seeing what's bizarre, seeing what's impactful in this like everyday nothingness. And for me personally, like that's sort of also how I live my life. I like to, it can be anything from like the mailman. There's things around me and in our neighborhood that I am absolutely fascinated with and tell people about. And they're like, why do you care? I'm like, how can you not care? It's just so interesting, And so your story and your personal story that is sort of, you reveal just glimmers of even yourself kind of behind your storytelling and your essays. And from what I see, and I think what you've mentioned, like you don't really write about your feelings because you don't even think they're that interesting to you, but they're fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm usually not that interested in people's feelings, Like, I like hearing stories and, I like knowing what's going on with somebody, but you'll have that friend who's like, I feel really, I don't know, like energy less lately, but then at the same time, I feel really hopeful and buoyant. I'm like, oh my God.
I was just talking to my husband last night. We saw something. It was actually an old Curb Your Enthusiasm, and it was hilarious because there was a lady who was sort of that way, and she was crying. I mean, her cat had died or something, but she's crying, and they said, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Well, yes and no." And I was like, "That's so that person." So more about just understanding though. So on my end, as a nutritionist, as a dietitian, we work with people on wellness, and this podcast is about wellness and nourishing, a lot about nutrition, but there's so much about wellness that has nothing to do with nutrition and everything to do with our mindset, our habits. And a big thing that we have done here in New Orleans, of all places, is something called Alcohol Free for 40. And it's this 40-day challenge where we do all these labs, inflammatory markers, liver enzymes, all this close-up photo of your face so you can see what's happening right up in there, really close, blood pressure, all this stuff, body composition. We do it at the end of 40 days of not drinking. And so seeing this transformation in people is just life-changing. For me, I put myself through it as sort of a test run when we first did it back at the end of 2015, and I didn't go back. I was like, for me, the improved, like how I felt not drinking was just, it was a game changer for me. And I think the normal level of drinking here in New Orleans is pretty high. And so what we would consider normal for me to go not drinking was just a game changer. So that's just my backstory very quickly. So as I'm looking at yours, when I see that through the years, you've overcome so many addictions, meth, you used cocaine, alcoholism, smoking, but it's
I wasn't so big on Coke.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it's funny, like when you think about addiction, like, okay, your body being addicted to something. You know, I've always, I don't know. I've never been certain if people are addicted to pot, you know. I don't know if it's something your body says, you better give me more of that.
How did you feel about it?
I couldn't, I mean, luckily, I've been writing since I was 20. And so the day I started writing, it became the most important thing to me. So I'd been wake and bake before that, you know, like I was super anti-drug when I was in high school. I got high when I was 14, came home, had all my sisters smell my fingers, was really pleased with myself. And then I became militantly anti-drug. And I just decided I did not like people who were on drugs. And then I went to college, and it was like a commercial, like, oh, come on, you know, or like an after school special. You can get high just this once, you know, and then people holding you down and giving you a shotgun. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
Tell us what that is, because I don't think everybody knows what this was. I learned about it from reading what you wrote. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't know this.
Shotgun?
Yes.
A shotgun is the closest straight guys come to getting gay. It's when you put the lid end of the joint in your mouth and then you just blow the smoke into somebody else's mouth. And the most homophobic guys will take a shotgun from another man. You know what I mean? This is the only way they can get high. They'll do it. And then I was just wake and bake, you know, get up and get high. And, you know, I transferred to a different college, and then I stopped going to classes. And oh, you know how that is. You miss your Italian class twice, and then you realize you haven't been in 2 weeks, and then...
And you still dream about it now, missing class.
Yeah, I do. I really do. So it just completely took over, you know, pot did. But what I really didn't like about it was, you know, you don't always have the money to afford pot, right? So you go and you hang out with people who have it, and they'll get you high. And 9 times out of 10, you don't really like these people that much. So you're hanging out with all these people you don't like, and you're wasting huge amounts of time, you know, waiting for them to pull the bong out or whatever. And then maybe you're dropping hints and you're saying, oh gosh, my bong broke. I see you've got a really nice one. Does it work pretty well? And then hating yourself for skeeving, for being so transparent, you know. And then the writing was really important to me. And I realized I couldn't write when I was high. And so I didn't get high until after I wrote.
Interesting.
And generally I was writing in the evening then. So I'd be finished with dinner and writing by about 11 o'clock. And then I'd get high. So at least...
You had discipline.
Yeah, I had that amount of discipline. Right. But then I got high, you know, if I had the pot every single night. Like if I had a flu, I would get high. And I just wound up in the same place every night. And then when I met my boyfriend Hugh and we were living in New York, you know, he doesn't get high. And then he would be out of bed, and it's a tiny little apartment. And then I'm just sitting there with headphones on, 5 feet away, getting high and listening to the same records with headphones on over and over and over again. And I just got so sick of myself, but I couldn't stop. And then I moved to Europe, and I didn't know where to get pot. Or, you know, some people would have it, but they would roll it, a joint with a cigarette, but that's just nasty to me. I mean, even though I smoked. And then when I was living in Paris, I quit drinking, and then I thought, you know, if you quit drinking, you got to quit pot as well. Otherwise, you're just, you know, still stoned every night and waking up with a thick head. And so anyway, I quit everything in 1999.
You stopped drinking and stopped smoking pot then, but quitting meth had been much earlier. What was the catalyst for that? Because that alone is just a tremendous beast to have come through. What did it look like? What did your body go through physically or emotionally as you were coming off of it?
Well, I mean, the only thing that saved me was, you know, the time in which I was addicted. I mean, like I started taking meth in 1979 and 1979, 1980. And what happened is the woman who sold it to me moved to Florida, and there was no one to take her place. I mean, today there'd be someone right behind her,
right.
more than happy to take her place. But she went out of town, and then I just white knuckled it. I just, it was awful. I mean, I was on the floor of my apartment. I just remember being on the floor of my apartment and just not being able to get up for days, and kind of in agony and writhing around. And after I came through it, I thought, never doing that again. And so she moved back to town. And then she opened her business and gave me a call. And I said, no, I can't do that anymore. I'm never going through what I went through.
I'm not going back. Right.
But if it had been years later,
it'd be an
and
entire
it's interesting
network of people.
too, because I paid somebody to, Yale bought all of my papers. And so I paid somebody to type up the diaries that I kept that were handwritten or typed.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really paying that much attention. And so she typed them up, but she typed them as they appeared on the page. So let's say if there was a picture pasted in my diary and I wrote around the picture, then there would be like 2 words on a line and then 1 word on a line and then 3 words on a line, to make space for the picture that was no longer there. And stuff like that just drives me crazy. So I went through it all and I was just reformatting it. And which meant that basically every line had to be fucked with, moved and stuff. So I just revisited that time. And it's so interesting how I had thought in my mind, the writing from those early years of my diary was just so pretentious and so awful. And it was the first year. And then it, the rhythm, the meter, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but then it was okay. I was kind of writing about what happened to me and I was describing things and reading it over. I was laughing. And later on it got pretentious again, the writing did. But there was this little window when it wasn't. And then I got on speed. And it is so painful to read that speed stuff. Oh my God. And what's most embarrassing to me is like my mother arranged this trip to Disney World and she wanted everybody to go to Disney World. And I didn't go, right? Because I was on speed and I didn't want to go and waste speed at fucking Disney World, staying in a tree house and stuff. And so I didn't go and the whole rest of the family went. And I look back and it's like, why couldn't I have done that for my mother?
Right. Right.
I mean, I loved, I always loved my mother. And then the time that I was on speed, I look at my diary and I'm just so cranky. And I don't know why I decided that everybody was an asshole but me, And
that was your priority at that time.
Yeah.
That was what mattered the most, it seems.
But, it was interesting because my sister Gretchen, I gave her, one time the woman who lived downstairs from me, she took speed too, but she was never married to it the way that I was,
Mm-hmm.
like she could take it or not take it. And so I broke into her apartment. I went to her job one day. And I said, oh, you know what? I left my notebook in your apartment. I had the key. And then I went and stole speed from her. And last year, my sister Gretchen, we were doing something. And she said, I just need to tell you, I broke into your apartment once and stole speed from you. And I thought, oh, that's interesting.
That's let's take a minute to talk about Nutrafol, our partner for this week's episode. The nutrients in Nutrafol supplements support healthy hair growth from within by targeting the 5 root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, and metabolism. Nutrafol is a physician-formulated nutritional supplement made with potent botanicals. No matter your stage in life, Nutrafol has a solution. Nutrafol offers targeted formulas for women and men that are clinically shown to improve hair growth and thickness through all stages of life, with medical-grade, natural ingredients that also support our whole body health. It is possible to grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com, entering promo code FUELED to save $15 off your first month's subscription. This is their best offer anywhere. It's available to the U.S. customers for only a limited time. Plus, free shipping on every order. Get $15 off at Nutrafol.com. That's spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FUELED. I think it's worth sharing the obsessiveness, the compulsiveness that it sounds like just truly plagued you for the first 20 years or so of your life. Not that this led to the substance use and abuse, but it seems like there was probably a connection. One of your essays covers this in just vivid detail. You talk about the obsessive counting and touching, counting your steps as you walked, licking light switches and mailboxes and lawn ornaments, and tapping your forehead with the heel of your shoe, or touching your forehead to the windshield or like the hood of a car. You wrote that in college, when you discovered like drugs or drinking or smoking, it sounds like the severity of these tics started to fade.
Once I started smoking cigarettes, a lot of it faded. A lot of the, the physical tics faded. But then it's funny. I mean, nowadays people take their kids to the, doctor or psychiatrist for everything. And they'll be like, verbs make him anxious. They'll stuff, and then there'll be a name that goes with it. And my parents never took me anywhere. They never took me. But, later I wrote something about it in my second book. When the book came out, I was contacted by like a psychiatrist, like a child psychiatrist, who said it sounded like a juvenile form of Tourette's that a lot of people just grow out of as they get a little bit older. I still think about things obsessively, like I know that for my boyfriend Hugh, for example, if he were to have an argument with somebody, the next day he would have forgotten all about it. Well, I would be playing it over and over in my mind for months or years to come. But it's a level, like I'm not on medication. Right. I know plenty of people who need medication for that kind of thing, and I'm nowhere near their level. But I don't know, cigarettes seem to quiet it, or maybe it was just going away on its own. And at the moment that I started smoking, it seemed, I started smoking when I was 20. But
so it's hard to say if it was or wasn't, but probably at that time you felt like, oh, well, here's the cure. What I thought was interesting too, you said like, when the teachers would come and talk with your mom, she was always so gracious with them. Like she would invite them in, sit down, have a drink, and like just like layer in humor and like deflecting their concerns and just really downplaying it. And you say that like she noticed it. She noticed these tics and habits, but she wasn't shamed or really bothered by them. And I think that that's like a beautiful thing, that she was sort of like, you know what, it's fine. It'll be fine. Like it just wasn't even a serious concern to her, it sounds like. Like she just accepted you.
Well, it was nice to have a place, for the lack of a better word, the word, it's a word I hate, but, have like a safe space, where I could, my father would cut it out. God damn it. Do you see what you're doing? Stop it. Stop it. But my mother was never like that. So, and I got made fun of at home, but, I deserved it. If somebody's twitching around like that and you're 8, of course you're going to make fun of them. So I don't hold that against anybody. And even then when they were making fun of me, there was I don't know. I didn't feel unloved.
Right. Well, especially if it's at home, maybe if it's your sisters and they're just kind of teasing, like with your mom, the influence, like she just sounds like a really spectacular person, and her influence on you and your storytelling. It sounds like growing up, she was sort of one of the first who helped to shape how you would think through a story and think through what details are needed or not needed.
All kids need that. You know, I mean, when I listen to people, kids who are really boring and they're telling a long pointless story and their mother's just nodding and listening, it's like, you know, you're not doing the kid a favor. You know, somebody needs to point out that they're boring. I mean, you know, if you're like 5 or something, you get a little bit of a break, but even by then you should be learning a few things.
She does sound like she was a really good storyteller, though, you know, like just, you know.
Yeah, but if you've got 6 kids, are you going to listen to that shit all day from 6 boring kids? And also, like when somebody would tell a story and they would start to drag or just give dialogue that wasn't. So she said, "How are you?" And I said, "Fine." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Fine." And she said, "How's your family?" And I said, "Good." And she said, "That's good." Like, none of that's important.
So she's like, cut to the chase, get to the point, kids.
And so we all, because you're competing with 5 other kids to get your mother's attention. And when you hear somebody doing that, you just jump right in there and you say, Tommy Williams saw a toad in the woods, caught it, and said, put a gasoline on it and set it on fire. Well, that's a good story. Somebody set a toad on fire. Yeah, now we're talking.
You had to like develop your ability to like craft a hook really young. You're like...
Yeah, but it was a really good skill, I thought.
Her drinking was something that was really prominent later in her life. But as a kid, it doesn't seem like that was something that was really even an issue in the household. What I think is interesting is as I kind of was, and this was as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, like I would love to talk to David and ask him these questions, because it sounds like growing up, she had cocktails just like maybe most people would have cocktails. At some point, though, when did it become an issue?
I feel like it became an issue when the majority of us had left the house. Mm-hmm. And then she was stuck at home with my father. And my younger brother, he's like 11 years younger than me. So really, the mother Paul had is completely different than the mother I had. You know, completely different. And I feel bad for him for that reason, that he didn't have the one that I had, because the one I had was really great, but his was drunk a lot. And, you know, you're a kid and your friends are coming over and your mom's drunk and they know your mom's drunk, you know, and they're laughing about it. And you know, that's really, really hard for a kid. When my mother got to that age, I was grown and I was out of the house. You know, I would have friends out. My mother would say, "Oh, why don't you invite a bunch of people over for dinner? I'll make nice dinner next Tuesday." And then, you know, sometimes the friends would get there and mom would be drunk. You know, but I was already in my 20s and I would think, well, you know, I've been drunk a lot at the table and I'm sure I've embarrassed her, you know, and so it's not unprecedented, you know, and so I struggled to be loyal. I didn't want to, because I loved her.
And at that point, you were still drinking and smoking pot, and it was like, who am I to say something to her about her drinking?
Yeah, but there was something lonely about hers. Do you know what I mean? I mean, whatever mine was, there wasn't, or I didn't feel like there was a loneliness. I had people around me, and I had people, you know, I had a boyfriend at the time, and I had, I mean, it was a boyfriend before Hugh. You know, and I had my friends and brothers and sisters, but my mom just seemed really alone. And we were her fan club, and her fan club had dispersed. And, you know, my dad retired, and so he was at home all day, and then he retired and he became a hoarder. And then So just constant fights about, crap piling up in the yard and in the basement. And, he could be really brutal during an argument, So it was just like a tomb. The house became kind of like a tomb. And I wish more than anything that she could have, quit drinking, because, you're not really going to make a big change. You have to make a sober decision. You have to in order to change your life. I kind of feel like, I know there, just people in my life that I will think of that way. And I'll think, you haven't made a sober decision in 40 years. Why don't you give yourself a chance? Just give yourself a chance to make a clear-headed decision about something. Maybe you'll decide to stay where you are. Who knows? But give yourself that opportunity.
And for years, she didn't.
No, she died. She was still drinking when she died. But I knew that, if people don't have a problem with their drinking, they wouldn't call you up and say, I've gone through 2 days without a drink. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't had a drink in 3 weeks. And then when they start drinking again, then they're embarrassed to talk to you because they already told you that they quit and they're afraid you're going to judge them.
And you can pick it up immediately. It's they think maybe they're hiding it, but it sounds like one of the things that, it seems as if there's like a regret that y'all didn't confront her. And it seems like maybe there's a wish that either talking with her or acknowledging it, because it, was, and tell me more about that. Or correct me.
Well, you know what? Well, we really don't talk about things in my family.
Like feelings.
Yeah, no, but it's crazy. We just don't. We don't really. And I guess I realized that. Pretty late in the game, because it sounds. We talk about all kinds of stuff, but we don't confront each other. And I think the fear is because we're all armed with semi-automatic weapons. So that if you're going to argue with not even argue, but confront somebody. And if you're going to say like, why did you do that? Why did you have 4 abortions in the 9th grade? 4 abortions. Why did you do that? No one in my family had 4 abortions in the 9th grade. But it's sort of like pulling out, pulling out this stuff that is just not pertinent to the discussion, just pulling out the worst thing you can say about somebody and trying to hurt them as badly as you can over a discussion over splitting a restaurant check, Or
the fear of that happening maybe is also there. So then you just kind of avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I don't know. It's funny. We just don't. We just don't.
And so even when she would call or say, hey, it's been, a couple of days since I had a drink, you would just sort of say, oh, okay, good. And just support if she reached out, but not really address it when things were really bad.
Yeah, I would never say, well, it's about time and you were so drunk the last time I saw you and that must have been, I was so embarrassed. No, we never said that.
With you, though, how was it with your drinking and like you said, smoking pot when Hugh was not into that? And so he's in bed and you're right there in a small apartment doing this. Did he talk with you about it? Was it a different path?
Hugh said things now. Hugh said a few things now and then, but Hugh and his whole family is more of, you need to cut back, like they don't understand.
Like his euphemisms.
Well, cutting back, like Hugh could cut back, my boyfriend Hugh, he could cut back. He doesn't need to, but if he can go a week without having a drink and not even realize a week has gone by, But if you're an alcoholic, there's no cutting back. You're either drinking or you're not. Like, it's not, if you could just have one drink every other night, you wouldn't be an alcoholic.
It's not even a conversation. My husband is a lot like Hugh, it sounds. He's the picture of balance, of moderation, and he's like that. If he had a glass of wine with a dinner, okay. If he didn't, okay. It's really a non-issue. And so when I made the choice personally, about 7 years ago, like, gosh, I feel so much better not drinking. It was just a switch flipped. He was supportive of it because it was neither here nor there to him, and just balance. But I think there's people, like you or like me, there's others of us who what we do is extreme, and for positive or for negative.
Right. And everything I do is extreme, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't, I got a Fitbit.
Right. I love it.
And then I started walking 15 miles a day. You know what I mean? Unless I'm in England, and then it's 20 miles a day.
Right.
And my record is 41 miles in a day.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not like, so I have to, it's not like, 10,000 steps and your Fitbit tingles and, you've met your goal. But that lasted, I don't know, a day maybe, like 10,000 steps. I can do better than that. And it just completely ruled my life. Or then it was picking up trash on the side of the road in England.
Are you still doing that when you're there?
Yeah. But I mean, I'm doing it like 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Oh, people think that is your job.
Yeah. And I'm doing it like if there's one plastic bag caught in a tree limb, I can't leave that there. Like it has to be every bit of trash. Right. That means that if there's a Coke can in blackberry bushes and getting it out means that I get scratches on my face and my arms and everything, I have to do it because it's there. And if I don't get it, nobody else is going to. But I can't walk past it. I mean, there have been times that I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not bringing my litter picker and my bag. I'm not doing it. I'm going to walk into the village just like a regular person. Then my arms are full by the time I get there because all my pockets are full. I can't do a half-assed job of it.
No, I get it. Things all start and Brad will say, Molly, this is a hobby. You're doing this as a hobby. And now, it goes from pottery as a hobby to, it's sold at retailers locally. He's like, seriously? Or he started teaching me tennis. And now I'm like, I just want to I don't even know the full rules, but I just want to hit the ball like the best possible. I just like want to get in there and perfect it. And it's just the like one thing, and it's extreme. Everything's extreme. And so for us, having something that is a positive, like letting that Fitbit drive you, walking, picking up the litter, these things, it's like, with Alcohol Free for 40 that I was telling you about, we call it replacement behaviors. And it's sort of one of those, I guess, phrases and like a recovery type thing. But the replacement behaviors are huge because someone can just say, I'm not going to drink. Well, but what happens when you start feeling that kind of like itchy for whatever it is that's like bringing you that calmness or kind of helping to turn down the noise? And so it's finding something else that can kind of give you that same feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, why is it England specifically that you pick up trash? Do you pick it up in other spaces too?
No, just when I'm there, because that's where I live, and it's, it's in the countryside there. It's just really glaring to me, and because it's so beautiful,
it's such a contrast,
and it's unnecessary. And anyway, I don't try not to think about it. I don't think about who did this. I don't want to be angry. I just pick it up.
Going back to Hugh and his talking with you about it, so your family didn't really deal with or address your mother's drinking. And so how did he or friends, how did these conversations come up? Or if he just sort of avoided it a little bit, did other people really try to address this? Or was it really a similar path, kind of where people turned an eye like y'all had with her?
Hugh said, said something like once or twice, but it was mainly me. I mean, it was just the shame I felt. I just was positive that everybody could see it on my face, and that when I went to the airport, to check in for a flight, they would think like, oh, this alcoholic's going to Cincinnati. Like, I just felt that everybody could see it on my face. And the day that I stopped drinking, I felt so free. I guess I just felt free, like that I could. I mean, it was kidding myself to think it still didn't show on my face, but I thought that if somebody did come up and said, "You were drunk last night," I would say, "Nope, you got the wrong person. That wasn't me." And when I look at pictures of myself from back then, I just look like a drunk. I just look worn out, washed out.
The skin and the eyes just show it, How many times had you tried multiple times before to stop drinking?
I never stopped. I never tried.
Really? So what clicked then? What was the catalyst for that day? Because it was March of 1999 that you made that choice. I
had a friend who, her husband just got out of rehab, and so I used to stay with her when I would go visit her. And her husband just got out of rehab, and I filled the house with liquor that I needed during my 3-day stay. And I didn't think that he just got out of rehab, and I brought liquor into their house, and he got into it. I mean, it wasn't,
it wasn't intentional.
And then I remember thinking to myself, well, like, it's not my fault he got into it. And that's true. But if I was so weak that I couldn't go a couple nights without drinking,
right.
I couldn't go without bringing it into his house. Like, I couldn't even think like, well, I'll go to a bar and get drunk. You know what I mean? Because I would want to sit at my desk and drink. I thought that's an alcoholic right there. Somebody who can't even do someone the courtesy of not bringing alcohol into their house at their weakest moment, And that was the last time I drank.
That's a hard story. That's really hard.
But I mean, I'd been so ashamed of myself for so long, and then that really kind of topped it off. And I think, you know what? I don't think I can carry any more shame. Like, I don't think that it's already so burdensome to me that, and so heavy that I can't bear the extra weight of what I just did. And so I quit. And it was funny because I left San Francisco and I went to Chicago, and then I stayed with a friend there too. And she said, "Let me get you a drink." And I said, no. I said, I didn't drink last night. I haven't had a drink in 24 hours. And then she said, "Just shut up and have a drink." Yeah. Wow. And I said, no.
It feels like sludge that these words are coming through because it's so unusual of a response.
Well, and then I got home to Paris, and he said, "Just have a drink and shut up about it." And I thought, you know what? No, and part of it, I felt like, I mean, in retrospect, it doesn't bother me that Hugh and my friend had said that. It kind of egged me. It made me stronger, and I thought, oh, you know what? You think, oh, I get it. You think that I'm not strong enough to do this. Like, I'll show you, and maybe I just needed that. I don't know.
You kind of marked like, okay, it's been 48 hours. You celebrated. It's been 6 months. I was going to ask, but it sounds like, as you were telling even Hugh, he was sort of like, okay, we'll see. Like, we'll see how long this sticks. It seems like at first, until probably at some point they realized this just is it. This is David now.
Well, it's a big change for the other person as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he was always kind of taking care of me, and I mean, he still does, but not, I don't need to be taken care of in that way anymore. I don't have to be put to bed. I don't have to be, I mean, like I never learned to drive a car, right? So I've never really been independent. I can't really go anywhere on my own. I can't, and I have a lot of things like that. Like I won't open any piece of mail that doesn't look like a fan letter.
That has responsibility behind it more than writing a reply.
Yeah. So, he just still does take care of me in a lot of ways, but he doesn't have to take care of me in that way anymore. Like I don't feel like I'm an invalid. I don't feel like I'm I don't
incompetent in these ways.
Embarrass him, but I'm not going to embarrass him that way.
Right. When I made that choice, it was 3 months before I said anything to Brad, and he had noticed that I was making different choices. But it took me a while because I don't know if you felt this way or if in your mind it was already a real sure thing. But at the 3-month mark, he and I were out to dinner, and I said, it's been actually 3 months now since that I haven't had anything to drink. And he said, really? And it was at that point that I felt comfortable sharing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's hard. That's a hard thing about it is telling people, because, if you tell everybody, look, I haven't had a drink in a week, I haven't had a drink in a month, I haven't had a drink in 2 months, then if you do have a drink, then you feel like you're going to be so embarrassed and so ashamed to see these people. But there comes a point when you have to take that chance, and you have to say, like, I feel fine telling people, it's easy. It's easy, not easy, but in the United States, if you're having a dinner party and someone says, nothing for me, thank you, when you pour in the wine, you don't think anything of it.
Right.
Or you think, oh, they're an alcoholic. But in England or France, well, you can have one glass. What do you mean? But everyone else is drinking wine. You have to drink wine too. You have to take at least one. This is really good wine. You have to take a sip of this wine. I got this wine special for us to drink tonight. You have, they're so backward when it comes to that, when it comes to substance abuse and to sobriety and stuff. They just don't, there's just something about it they just don't get. In England, people are horrible drunks, horrible drunks. And you go out with people and you don't, maybe you know them in a, socially or in a work context. And then you go out and at the end of the night, they're falling down drunk. And they all say the same thing. Well, we work really hard, so we deserve to play hard too. And it's like, you don't work that hard.
To play this hard.
Yeah, to break it to you, but you're really not working that hard.
I think the attitude towards alcohol that you're describing in Europe is a lot how it is here in New Orleans also. It is just such a norm. And when I would say, I remember right after I had made that decision, we had some friends who came over and they walk in the house and they're just heading straight to the wine fridge. And they start to pour me a glass. I said, oh, no, I'm good. I'm not going to have any. And I remember our friend, his name was David, also looks at me and goes, ever? It was like a shriek and hands above his head. And I was like, well, at least right now. It was like, but it's similar. Do you look back and give yourself credit or kind of just the acknowledgement, that recognition for overcoming this? Because I know you're always looking forward. You're looking at the next thing and there's always so much on your horizon, but do you kind of pause and look back and realize just how huge this is?
Well, I think too, I told myself that so much of it was caught up. I started smoking and drinking on the same day.
Oh gosh, I didn't realize that.
And it was the same day I started writing too.
Oh, okay.
So, No, I started writing and then I started drinking a couple months later. But then I told myself that I couldn't write unless I was drinking, right? And so then I couldn't quit drinking because I wouldn't be able to write again.
There was going to be no creativity, right?
And then when I quit drinking, the hardest thing was, like, I remember because I always wrote it in the evening. Mm-hmm. And so I remember when I quit drinking, I sat down, I sat down at night and I tried to drink, I was looking for a beverage, But I mean, if you're going to drink like 7 beers, you're not going to drink 7 Cokes,
right.
or 7 bottles of orange juice, And so I remember trying to, so I tried non-alcoholic beer, but that wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like beer tastes so great. The only reason to ever drink it was that it got you fucked up. And so I would traditionally have beer, and then I would drink alcohol, then I would start drinking scotch, and then I would get high. So I tried different beverages, and then I thought the problem was that it was night, So then I started writing in the morning and thought, okay, well, I never drank in the morning, so I'll just get up in the morning and start writing. And then I didn't do, I'll take the night off. And then eventually I started, I work in the morning and then I go back to work at night. But at night, when I go back to work, I drink tea, So that all worked itself out. And when I quit smoking, it was like, oh my God, this is really going to be hard. But I just made myself sit at the desk for 20 minutes and then for 30 minutes and then for an hour and then 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. It wasn't impossible.
Did you smoke inside when you smoked?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I don't know why. I mean, obviously, especially like if you're in New York, it's a big hassle to go outside to smoke. I mean, but I wasn't envisioning that. So that's a big change. And for that, and you wrote an entire essay called The Smoking Section. So for people who want to read this, it's hilarious. And it's in David's book called When You're Engulfed in Flames, which I also love the title. But basically you did like your own intervention. It was like a self-imposed intervention that you brought upon yourself, and y'all went to Tokyo. Like, let me change every single circumstance around me and my whole different, removing these existing triggers to help stop smoking.
Well, it's a $10,000 quit smoking plan. So it involves renting an apartment in Tokyo, going to Tokyo for 3 months, enrolling in Japanese class. Yeah. It'll work for anyone. But it worked for me because I just knew that if I were going to quit smoking and then say, okay, tomorrow's my first day without a cigarette, I would last like 10 minutes. And then I would think like, oh, this is ridiculous. Give me a cigarette. But instead, I went to another country. I had a whole other apartment. There was a whole language to learn. Everything was different. Everything. I wasn't allowed to smoke in the apartment. In Tokyo, you can't. One of the reasons I chose Tokyo was that you can't smoke on the street in Tokyo. You have to go to a special smoking station, and they're not that easy to find.
Right.
And so I thought, I thought that would really help. Inside you can smoke your head off, in coffee shops and restaurants. So it's just the opposite of how it was in Paris or New York or most other places. But it just, it worked for me. And again, I'd never tried to quit smoking before. I just kind of got the idea of 3 months before my 50th birthday. I thought, you know what? I'm turning 50. I'm going to quit smoking. So I did.
I think it's incredible that for meth, alcohol, and cigarettes, that all three of them were, meth, it sounds like it was sort of an imposed catalyst for change when the dealer moves. But with alcohol and cigarettes, to not have time and time and time again to try and fail, that's tremendous. To not be so just, this sense of failure. Which of those three was hardest for you to overcome?
Oh, drinking, I think. Mm-hmm. But I think it's, I remember a friend said to me when I quit drinking, she said, you're going to have to be the same forever. Like an even keel, like forever. Like you're never going to feel that,
really,
that nice kind of wooziness, when you get drunk. That's pretty great, and not the 8,000th time you've been drunk. Do you know what I mean? But it's like on that second drink, when it feels good and you're not out of control yet, and you can still talk to people and walk across the room and not worry that you're going to stumble, and you don't have to be ashamed. You're just kind of a little bit more on than usual.
So you're
was
saying
burning a little bit brighter.
You wouldn't experience that again, is her point?
Yeah, she was just reminding me of that.
But I think that we do. There's times, how many times, like if you're just like find yourself just crying, laughing, you can't breathe, you can't talk. And there's no alcohol there, or even just the rush I got of like introducing myself to you for the first time and having that conversation. And it felt as if I had, had 30 drinks, So I think that there are things that we do still have these rushes or these other things, but it's so nice to not have the negative, to not feel bad. You still didn't answer though, if you give yourself that credit or that recognition.
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to say pride, because
it's always, the thing is about start trying and then failing is then you have a history of failure.
Right.
And I think that makes it hard.
Right.
So if you quit smoking and you quit smoking for 2 weeks and then you start again, then you quit again, then you have to make it past the 2 weeks before you can get any traction. I just considered myself fortunate. It's easier when you don't have a history of failure. It's just easier. So
if we can just bottle up what you've got, that when that switch flips and that decision is made, it sounds like, I guess though, like we're saying, sort of that obsessiveness, that compulsiveness also benefited you when it came to making that decision,
Yeah. No, it definitely did. But, just as a person who's an addict, you have to realize that, on some level, it could all, you can't get too full of yourself, because it could all come crashing down. But probably the most stressful thing that's ever happened to me professionally happened to me after I quit smoking, and I didn't start smoking again. So when people say to me, like, I quit smoking, but then like my mother-in-law, died and the stress made me smoke again. It's like, no. Mm-hmm. A, she was your stepmother-in-law. B, you're just using that.
Right.
A lot of times when people, if I'm signing books and somebody comes up with a cane, I always write in their book, you're just using that cane as a crutch. And so I feel that that's the thing. It's people using a cane as a crutch when they say, my mother-in-law died, and so I had to start smoking again. That's not, people have gone through much more stressful things and remained quit. That's the thing I always tell myself with everything. I'm not the only one who's ever been through this. Mm-hmm. Lots of people have been through this. Lots of people have quit drinking. Lots of people have quit smoking. The world's full of people who have quit these things. There's nothing special about me. If they can do it, I can do it.
I was going to ask what you would say to somebody, when it does feel so monumental that because it has taken over someone's everything. There's a sense of like less than zero control they have. So where do you even begin? And I think what you just said is sort of one way to frame it or position it of it's doable, it's possible, it's within the sphere of like, it does have a level of possibility. It's going to be hard, and you have to put a level of focus and dedication in each of these instances that you and I talked about. It wasn't just
people do it all the time.
Yeah. And making it a priority with each time you shifted that focus and that intensity to quitting.
Well, again, I mean, I don't want to come across as like, I don't think I'm stronger than anybody else. I don't know. I guess too, it was just all stuff that benefited me professionally. I mean, one of the reasons I quit was smoking was all the good hotels went non-smoking. And so that's all I do is go on tour and stay in hotels. And if you're in hotels for, 120 nights a year, and you're staying at the AmeriSuites and not the Four Seasons, because the Four Seasons is completely non-smoking, and somebody else is paying for it, that's a problem, And so plus I was just angry all the time.
That's hilarious. I love it. What are some of the things, if someone's listening, I know you don't at all put yourself in the space to say you have, the expertise in this, but I guess if friends have talked with you about this, have friends confided in you, like what's been kind of your guidance to them or your advice, if any?
Oh, I mean, the thing about it is with, there have been a couple of people in my life who have needed to, like, there was this woman I worked for years ago, and she was sweet. And I didn't realize when I was working for her that she was drunk every day, right? That her orange juice that she was putting vodka in her orange juice, right? I was working in her home, right? And then her drinking really got out of control, And then she started calling me at home drunk. And I remember, gosh, it's hard to remember now if I said something or if I didn't say something. Because I guess the way I felt was like, if you're going to point that out, if you're going to say to somebody like, look, your drinking is really out of control and everyone's talking about it, and people are avoiding you and you really got to do something about this, then I've always felt like you need to then propose something or you need to be there for them, Like, I don't know that you just dump that on them and then walk away, So I guess that's been part of it is like, I'm very selfish, I guess selfish is a good word. I mean, I'm just, it's all about me getting my work done, and so the last thing I want is you calling me because you're about to have a drink.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, they say to offer a suggestion is to offer to volunteer. And that's sort of, I think, what you're saying there. Like, if you're going to say, I'm going to bring this up to you and I think this is something to address, then you also feel like you would want to be able to put yourself in a place of support for that.
Yeah.
I like how you said, though, just looking at it under the bigger picture of, I'm not the first who's gone through this. Other people have gone through this. They've conquered it. As people are listening to this or will be reading about it in the Times-Picayune New Orleans Advocate, I think hearing you and me, you and I are talking about this, and I think we're people that maybe just on this outside, if someone's looking at you or looking at me, they wouldn't necessarily think that would have been, these things could have been such a challenge to us. And we're just two of just this span of humanity who has dealt with this and overcome it. And for everybody, there's a different catalyst, and for each of the addictions that you came through, there was a different catalyst. So it's like finding that, I think, recognizing when it's truly there and then taking advantage of it when that true inspiration is there to really bring about change for us.
Well, I mean, again, I mean, I thought about drinking a lot of times, but then, I mean, it's that AA thing, you just have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's, that's just true. You can't, I mean, if you could quit the first time you get sick and tired of yourself, that'd be great. But, for most people, they just have to keep kind of destroying themselves until they're ready to do something about it. And nobody can, it's got to be your decision. It can't, I mean, it's such a waste to, I think anyway, maybe I'm wrong about this, but like to take people off the street and send them to rehab. If it's not their idea to be in rehab, it's not going to do any good. I mean, maybe it'll plant some seed that might work late. I mean, again, I'm not I don't know enough to say what I just said, but I guess it just always seemed to me that I was on the train in London one day, and I was on a train to London, and there was somebody playing music on his phone. And normally I wouldn't do a thing like this, but I just couldn't stand it. And so before I knew it, I was looking this guy in the face and I was saying, why don't you listen to that with headphones on? And he said, I don't have headphones. I said, then turn it off. And I'm the biggest coward in the world. And this guy, he looked like all English thugs do, like little, kind of bangs, like little short bangs and a bad complexion, and was wearing a tracksuit. And last thing I expected was for him to actually turn it off. He turned his music off, and then he started calling me a cunt, and everybody looked down at their phone, because this is why they didn't stop him in the first place, But anyway, then it turned out I started listening to the guy, and he was about 20 years old maybe, and he was just pathetic, and he was the drink trolley came down the aisle, and he bought a beer with all the money that he had, and he said he'd just gotten out of rehab.
Oh, gosh.
So he bought this beer. And in a movie, if I'm watching a movie, nothing gets to me the way that does. If the hero starts drinking again or taking drugs again.
Right.
And even though I just had a run-in with this guy, I was like, don't do it.
Right.
Oh, don't do it. And then he was saying he was going to go stay with some friends in Croydon, and did anybody know where this street was? And I wanted to go back and say, I've got an iPad, I can show you, and he got off the subway, and I just saw him standing up, and he was shorter than me. He was just tiny, and he had this big suitcase full of crap, and I just felt so bad for him. I just the government had paid to send him to rehab. He didn't do any good, but he was just such a, I don't know, but I was glad in a way that because when you ever run in like that, you just want that person to be an asshole. And then it makes it more difficult when you think like, oh, he's not an asshole. He's like, he's like
sad. He's
in
struggling.
trouble, and he's,
On that, I wanted to ask, and it slipped my head earlier, your friend's husband who had gotten out of rehab and then slipped with the alcohol. Where did he land?
He hasn't had a drink in, he relapsed after that. But, like a year or two later, he got on his feet, and
I would imagine that was hard for your friend to have, a hard conversation to have with you too, I would think.
Well, she didn't have the conversation with me. I mean, I apologized to her later.
Yeah.
But
it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So now some of the things that I turn to, and I know you do, is walking. And for me, one of the biggest things that was a huge, I don't know, it just kind of like, it didn't do the same thing that drinking does, but it kind of gave the same release, is walking. And so we started, instead of coming home and meeting at home and having a drink, or immediately working all day and then rushing to dinner and meeting friends and having a drink, Brad and I meet home and we go for a walk. And it's a walk and talk. We solve the world's problems, or I'll walk on my own. A lot of times, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast, but a lot of times I'm just like, my thoughts are going through my head. I know that's a huge thing for you, is walking. When you're touring, do you still make time for walks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get to walk as much as I do, but, I could get at least, 8 miles a day.
Yeah. Okay, so next time you're in New Orleans, I would love to meet you for a walk and talk. I can take you to some of my favorite places.
Well, it's interesting. You kind of do need a guide there, because sometimes you take a walk there and you're like, oh, right, didn't want to walk here. I mean, that it can just, that can just, it's in a city you don't know.
Right. Right. Your essay on New Orleans was just truly spot on. In fact, just this past weekend, we were driving down Canal Street. We passed where I imagine it is where you stay, at the Ritz right there, which is right across the street from the Walgreens, which is walking distance to the Orpheum. And we saw the guy who's out there preaching from the Bible with his umbrella hat on. I was like, I need to tell David he is still here going strong. So I can't, funny. It's fantastic. I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been just so generous for you to share, just the insight and then the story behind your storytelling. I know the personal sharing isn't so much something that you do all the time. And so I'm really grateful for you to indulge with my curiosities and my interests, and, kind of putting some of these pieces together and giving some of that clarity.
Oh, well, gosh, it's been nice for me too, Molly.
Well, I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully next time you're in New Orleans. I'll definitely come by your show.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, David.
Bye.
Bye. It is a beautiful thing when we have the opportunity to spend time with someone who we've admired, who we've looked up to. And it's even more beautiful when that person surpasses all expectations, sharing their time and giving of themselves just so openly and genuinely. I am truly honored and grateful to David for his generosity with his time, also his rawness, his truth, his humor. A shorter version of this interview will run in print in the Times-Picayune New Orleans Advocate about a week or two after this podcast airs. We'll add the online link to the show notes then. Also in the episode notes, you'll find several links where you can read, watch, and hear more of David, specifically his essays, which I promise you'll enjoy. I hope that you've loved this conversation as much as I have. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you'd like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.